Welcome to the Gladden Longevity Podcast with Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, where our passion is helping you to become an age hacker. On this show, we want to help you optimize your life, energy, longevity, health, and human performance with impactful and actionable information by answering 4 questions. How good can we be? How do we make 100 the new 30? How do we live well beyond 120? And how do we live young for a lifetime? I'm Steve Ryder, and Dr. Gladden, we just wrapped up with Mario Brainović, who is the CEO of Earth Technologies Ltd, which produces this little wand here that I'm showing on the video that produces Aǹalemma Water. It's a coherent water I got this back, I want to say it was at some point in December, and I played around with it some, but after listening to this, I'm going to be using this thing freaking a lot for a lot of different applications to see how it works.
Yeah. No, we had a chance to try it, but I don't think we tried it properly.
Yes.
Yeah. What's coming up for you in this episode is really a fascinating conversation about a different kind of structured water that is in a wand, if you will, that's has crystalline glass. And you can use this wand to actually structure your other water. And the research data that he has is quite impressive. And you're going to love this because it has an impact on animals, plants, humans, in amazing ways. Gut biomes,
brainwaves,
brainwave coherence. They're looking at they've seen ATP increases that are quite dramatic. They're researching NAD levels. It's becoming, in my mind, almost one of these foundational things. When you think about water, it's so foundational to life. You know, we've had podcasts around different kinds of water, I think all of which have been super helpful. But this one is kind of like something that you can use almost foundationally, right? And you buy this thing one time, and you just keep using it. So it's a really cool deal. I think it's very, very cool.
Mario talked about bathing in this water by using the wand in the bath and
you're going to put
watering your plants. I'm looking at putting it in my cold plunge and letting it sit there for a couple days as the water filters around. So that way it gets coherent. And I'm really intrigued with this little wand here.
Yes, the science behind it. They've been so passionate about doing these double-blind, placebo-controlled trials on so many. The science here is really quite solid, and you can go to their website, which you'll find, which we'll announce to you, which is
the website is coherent-water.com or Aǹalemma-water.com. That's Aǹalemma-water.com. And while you're there, if you use the code AGEHackers in checkout, you can get 10% off of your order.
Welcome, everybody, to the Gladden Longevity Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, and I'm here today, not every day, but I'm here today with Steve Ryder, co-host. Steve, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Dr. Gladden. Yourself?
Good.
How's the weather down there where are you at, Dallas right now?
Yeah, it's 13 degrees. I went for a run this morning in 13 degrees with a pair of shorts on and a hat, a ball cap, and a couple of shirts. I thought, I'm just going to see what this is like. And sure enough, it was pretty cold. So,
well, yeah, I mean, when it's cold down there in Dallas, you have humidity in the air that we generally don't have here in Colorado. And so on Saturday, I took my dog out for a hike, and it was when I left the house, it was 5 degrees. And so I got about 2 miles in with the dog. I didn't want to push him too much, but I definitely could have gone longer. And I was surprised at how I just wore a base layer and then my jacket and pants. And I was starting to get really warm.
Yep. No, I think actually the thing that held me back was I didn't have my ears covered. I just had a ball cap on. If I'd had a little coverage on my ears, I think it would have actually been fine. Yeah. And maybe long pants as opposed to a pair of shorts. So I thought, your legs usually stay warm. I will say this. I have a car that is a convertible, and it's a little Porsche Boxster Spider. And anyway, I drove over to work today with the top down because if I'm going to drive that car, I'm going to drive it with the top down. And I thought, I'm just going to go out there and see what this is like. And sure enough, it was brisk, but it was fun.
All right. So did you wear a cap or did you go bald headed?
Yeah, I had on headphones and a cap and a hood, and it was fine. I was a little chilled by the time I got to the work.
You were probably getting some crazy eyes from people on the road.
Well,
what the hell's this guy doing?
I didn't see another convertible. Let's just say that. So, right. There was only me, but I thought, okay, it's good to stand out a little bit. So speaking of standing out, we have a guest with us today from Croatia, actually, probably our first guest from Croatia. His name is Mario Brainović. And Mario has been doing some interesting things in the whole health and wellness space that he's going to bring us up to speed, and has a real keen interest currently in water, which is really a very interesting topic. Mario, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, guys. It's my pleasure to be here.
So Mario, bring us up to speed a little bit. I know you've been an entrepreneur and a researcher and a visionary in the field of health and wellness. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Well, I was always fascinated by the whole health and wellness thing. And I always believed that body has an innate ability to heal itself. So I was always very much passionate in finding ways how to help that natural process in a powerful way. This led me to, I opened a pharmaceutical company, natural pharmaceutical company. So I only
Natural pharmaceutical company. That's not something we hear every day. Natural pharmaceutical company. What does that even mean? What are you talking about?
I didn't work with any chemicals. I only worked with natural substances, something that is highly efficient and something that does not produce side effects. Let's go it that way, or a minimum that way. And it was it was a really gratifying experience because through the work, I helped thousands of people, and I was a huge fan of it. I just love doing it.
So you're looking for naturally occurring molecules and then kind of using them in kind of a pharma approach. Is that the idea?
Yes. I took natural substances, but then I did studies on it and proved the efficiency of it. And then I brought it to the market. And then it was highly specific for certain indications. And
like what? Really, what would be an example of that?
For instance,
what kind of indication are we talking about?
I had the world's best medication for hemorrhoids.
Okay.
It actually worked in 94% of people. So it's
Was it oral or topical?
Rare. It's actually oral.
Okay, interesting. That's fascinating.
It really is a phenomenal thing. But I have to say this, I sold the company to Walgreens with many other supplements and medicines. After a while, I brought it to really kind of high level. So I sold the whole business. And then I was kind of thinking, if I'm ever going to work again, I really would like to do something which is for the highest good of all, something that helps people, that helps the environment, that helps animals, that help plants. It was a tall order. But actually, I was introduced to Dr. Erik Clarker and Dolf Zantinge, who are actually founders and inventors. Dr. Erik Clarker actually invented the Aǹalemma Water, the Coherent water. And when I died,
so we're going to transition from hemorrhoids to water here. So that's a transition I make on a regular. No, I'm just teasing. So Aǹalemma Water, spelled Aǹalemma Water, Aǹalemma Water. So tell us about Aǹalemma Water. We know a little bit about structured water. We know about water that's low in deuterium. We know water that's high in silica. We've had some interesting water conversations here. But tell us a little bit about the Aǹalemma Water. What's the story here?
Dr. Erik Clarker and Dolf Zantinge, they actually picked up a whole lab from the famous German scientist, Dr. Fritz Albert Popp. And he invented this biophoton technology that can capture every single biophoton. Every single living thing exudes these tiny particles of light. And he created a technology that can capture every single one of them. So you can very accurately measure vitality of a biological system using that thing. And very soon into the research, Dr. Erik Clarker discovered that when you change water, biophoton emissions start to change dramatically. He realized that the water is basically the most fundamental level of our existence. When you change that, entire biology follows. And all of our research that we did in the years that followed very accurately proved that when you change the water, everything else changes.
So what we're saying is that if we improve the quality of the water in our systems, that the biology will behave differently.
Exactly.
And so we've used another device called an Ang3, a nano-V that has the ability to actually improve partitioning of water inside the cells, which increases protein folding. And then we've talked about diminished deuterium water that has the ability to decrease cancer risk and improve health. And then high silica water from deep in the earth that also is naturally deuterium depleted. So this water that we're talking about, how does it compare to those things? Is it more structured water, or what are we talking about here?
We realized that water on this planet at this point in time exists in what we call a chaotic state. So H2O molecules, they kind of move chaotically, they crash into each other constantly. But since all of this is happening on an atomic level, nobody's really aware of that. We found a way to bring order back into this chaos. What we found that water can behave in these coherent fields, that's why we call it coherent. There is this, usually people talk about structured water, where H2O molecules start to form this liquid crystalline state. But we actually found out that there is even more to it. There are coherent fields which start to move in harmony with each other. And through this very interesting process, water becomes alive. It actually becomes empowered, and it can do much more. Actually, we believe that it can do what nature intended to begin with. And we realized in our early research, we actually had a huge greenhouse where we tested first on plants. So we tested all kinds of waters to see how biophoton emissions would change. And after years of research, we found what we call now the full spectrum coherent water, the water that is in optimum state. And when you use this water on plants, you have by far the biggest biophoton emissions.
That's interesting. So, I've noticed something with water and plants, and that is that either with plants or if you buy flowers, if you use tap water to water them, they're dead in a week. And yet, if we use, reverse osmosis water on them, like we might get it at a grocery store, Whole Foods or someplace like that, and in both cases, you're using some plant food, they'll last for 3 weeks, easily last for 3 weeks. And it was stunning to me when that first happened. And I thought, wow, there must be some really toxic stuff in our tap water that's causing these plants to die within 3 weeks. So I guess the question I have, so the audience understands, what he has developed is, think of it as a wand that's actually filled with this particular kind of water. And you put the wand, I don't know if it's glass or not, but I think it's glass, and you put it into another body of water and stir it around for a period of time, and it tends to imbue that water with the properties of the water inside the wand. So I'm just curious, I haven't tried this, but I would be interested to try doing that with tap water and see if the flowers would live longer. Are you saying that they would?
This is exactly that we would do. And we were actually we really went down the rabbit hole. So we did proper testing on plants and on people and on animals, when we really saw phenomenal and very, very repeatable results. So just to kind of make a step back, we realized that water is a broadband absorber, receiver and transmitter of energy, frequency, and vibration. And we also realized that water is always going to pick up the most dominant frequency of its environment, which is really fascinating. Water is always going to copy whatever is kind of in its environment. When we realized this, our whole quest was to create the most dominant positive frequency water there is, because we knew that if we would expose any other water to it, all the water would become, just like you mentioned, imbued with a similar state. So what we did, we actually...
Let me ask you this. So if let's say you have a pitcher of water and you use the wand on this water, you're going to imbue the water in the pitcher with this quality, this structure, if you will, this energetic field almost, it sounds like. You can use that water throughout the day. You can put it on your plants. You could drink it. What happens if you put it in a blender and you're going to make a smoothie, or you heat it up to make a cup of coffee or tea? Does it lose because heat, of course, is going to induce, lots of randomness in the system. Does it destroy what was done, or how does that work?
This is actually where it gets really interesting. nothing actually happens. When you heat the water and it reaches the boiling point, of course, the molecules, or how we're going to call it, break. But as soon as the water kind of cools a little bit, everything, since water has this extraordinary memory, it will always not only pick up the most dominant frequency, it will remember it. So everything will kind of fall exactly in the same space. And we actually tested and retested it. There was some scientists that created some form of coherent water or structured water, but we tested basically almost all of them. And the coherence or the structure lasts anywhere between a couple of minutes to a day and a half. Then the water goes back into the chaos. But with Aǹalemma Water, there is a huge difference because we tested it now for 6 consecutive years after just one treatment. Water never goes back to chaos.
Never goes back after 6 years.
Yes. And actually, it takes 1 full year for us to create the mother water. It takes 5 stages. And when it passes through the 5th stage, it never goes back. And this is why it's so extraordinary and why the effects that we're having are so repeatable and so amazing.
Okay, so I suspect that you're using this water. You're talking about plants and animals and people, but I assume that you're probably using it also in vitro, like on cells, on tissue cultures, or...
Actually, we haven't done an in vitro study up until now. We directly went into in vivo.
Okay. And so what kind of parameters are you measuring in a human or an animal? What do you notice with this water? What's changing? What parameters are you measuring?
So this is interesting. Since this water is an electromagnetic phenomenon, well, we're kind of thinking, what's the most electromagnetic part of human biology? And it's our brainwaves. So this was the first study that we did. We actually took a gold standard study. We took identical twins, and we gave them. Doctor administering the water didn't know which water was which, and twins didn't know which one was which. And we monitored through QEEG their brainwaves. And it's really interesting because it's very fast. Almost as soon as the twin that took Aǹalemma Water, almost a sip of Aǹalemma Water, there was an instant change in the brainwaves. There is almost instant better connection between the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, an instant cooling effect on the brainwaves, while the other twin didn't experience anything. So nothing changed. This was really a huge thing for us because it was kind of irrefutable. And 3 weeks later, we repeated the experiment, but we gave Aǹalemma Water to the other twin. And we saw exactly, like you copy-pasted, exactly the same phenomenon, while the other twin, again, experienced nothing. So this was a huge kind of indicator that something biologically remarkable was happening. So this was the first study that
we did. Let's talk a little bit about the EEG further. So, we know about delta waves and beta and alpha and gamma, theta waves. We're familiar with all those in terms of how they work. Were you finding that people were moving into one waveform preferentially over another, or were you seeing something with regards to coherence between the left and right hemispheres, or what actually were you observing?
We're actually observing the delta coherence. That's something which was really interesting. But more than that, there is exactly like the scientist that was doing, it was an overall cooling effect and overall connecting effect. So everything started working together, so to speak. And, since we saw this delta movement as well, we wanted to do a further test. So we took one person with the serious neurological issue with the delta Alzheimer patient, which they're actually having delta through daytime, which is high. And we actually put them on Aǹalemma Water, and after, I believe, month and a half, their brainwaves actually went to normal. We don't want to say this is for general health and wellness, so we are not saying that this water cures and heals anything, but I just want to mention this really, really interesting effect, because when we saw such a powerful effect on the brainwaves, we wanted to see what will happen with people that actually have serious issues with brainwaves. And we had actually amazing results.
Let me ask you this. What happens if you wake up and you make some water and you drink it, and then you go out and you drink water from some other source? Does that negate what you just did? Do you undo what you did? Do you have to just only drink this water, or how does that work?
Well, the only thing that I can say, for instance, is all of the other studies that we did. We always say to people in the study, it was double-blind, placebo-controlled study, we always told them you need to drink at least 1.5 liters of water a day. So I can just stick to the science.
Of this water.
Of this water.
Aǹalemma.
Aǹalemma water.
Yes.
So every study that we did, people had to drink 1.5 liters of water per day. So since this was the science done on it, double-blind, placebo-controlled, we always say to people, well, if you want to have effects of it, we already proved just drink 1.5 liters of water a day. So you know you're getting the effect. But we haven't done science on smaller quantities of water or kind of what happens. But I can tell you, since, as I mentioned, water is always going to pick up the most dominant frequency of its environment. If you take in the water of high frequency, since 99% of our molecules are water, we're 70% water in mass, but 99 in molecules. When you enter this kind of water in your system, your entire system, so to speak, gets upgraded. That's why we're having such a profound effects when people drink this water.
That's fascinating. That's really interesting, actually. The people that were doing the study that were drinking 1.5 liters, were they only drinking that water? Did they just drink that 1.5 liters? Was that all the water they drank, or did they drink other sources?
No, they drink all the other, but we just insisted that they had to drink 1.5 liters of Aǹalemma water per day. So people drank their teas, their coffees, their whatever they were drinking, but they had to drink 1.5 liters of water per day. Maybe we can jump into another human study that we did. Since we saw this, we wanted to see, what's the correlation between biophotons, which we saw in increase in vitality of the plants, with people. So then we were thinking, what's the correlation in energy? And we thought, it's ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is the primary energy currency of the cell, which is directly responsible for powering majority of cellular processes in our body, including muscle contraction, nerve impulse transmission, biochemical reactions. Basically, every heartbeat, every breath depends on ATP. So what we did a double-blind placebo-controlled study where we measured ATP in people. We employed luciferase, which is an enzyme that catalyzes light production in bioluminescent organisms. And due to its extraordinary sensitivity, you can actually very accurately measure ATP levels in humans. So we took, quote unquote, snapshot of ATP levels in people in the beginning of the study. So they had to drink 1.5 liters of Aǹalemma water per day without changing anything else in their world. So they didn't change their exercise regime, didn't change their diet. Everything else was monitored, that stayed the same. And 2 months later, we took another test to see what actually happened. And we saw 20% rise in overall mitochondrial energy of the body over the placebo. If you count in the placebo, that's 27%. And we're talking about actual mitochondrial energy. So we're not talking about Red Bull or something like that. We're talking about actual real energy, which had really profound implications. All scientists now agree that the key cause of aging is actually a decline in mitochondrial function. And we proved that just by drinking...
It's one of the causes, not the only cause. But
not the only, but one of the top ones, And we proved that just by drinking the water, your overall mitochondrial function increases significantly.
Yeah, that's quite fascinating. I will say that I've tried the wand, but I've not drunk 1.5 liters a day with it. I've drunk a glass of water here and there, so to speak. And so I don't think I've been systematic with it to be able to experience a real impact per se. But
that's why we're insisting that people should drink and in a while. This is not something, like you drink a glass of water, and even though we proved that your brainwaves actually changed almost instantly, but to have a deep, profound, and long-term effect on your biology, which is what we want, you just need to drink the water, nothing else.
Interesting. Okay, fascinating. Are there other studies that you have that are looked at things besides mitochondrial function and brainwave coherence? Have you
actually
measured any other biological parameters?
I was so very fascinated all the time with the microbiome. Mm-hmm. This is also, I have to say one thing. This water, since we already knew that it has a profound effect on plants, we were also thinking, because this is a huge problem on the earth right now, the quality of the soil is rapidly declining all over the planet. So what we actually did to test the effect of the water, we took completely destroyed piece of soil through glyphosates and all the chemicals. It was completely barren. You couldn't grow anything on it. So one chunk of it, we watered with regular water, and one chunk we watered with Aǹalemma water. And the chunk that was watered with regular water, basically, again, nothing happened. Everything stayed the same. But the chunk of the land that was watered with Aǹalemma water, we saw huge explosion in the biodiversity of the microbiome. So much so that the bacteria in the soil started to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere into the soil where it belongs. The whole nitrogen cycle of the land increased dramatically, and the total nitrogen in soil increased dramatically, and within only 2 months, this soil became fertile again, which was really, really kind of extraordinary to observe. And not only that, usually when the rain falls, all of the nutrients actually go to the deeper layer of the soil. But with Aǹalemma water, there is a huge retainment of those nutrients in the top layer of the soil where the plant can actually use it. So this was a huge thing, which then inspired us to do a human microbiome study, because we saw, okay, something is really happening with the microbiome of the soil. Since everything in nature is connected, we wanted to see what will happen with people. So we did a double-blind placebo-controlled study where we measured the dysbiosis index of the microbiome. This dysbiosis index measures the degree of deviation within the microbiome, taking into account all the bacterial phyla and species and their weighing factor. So again, we took a snapshot of people's microbiome, and then they had to drink 1.5 liters of Aǹalemma water per day, again, without changing anything else in the world. They didn't change their exercise regime. They didn't change their diets. They didn't change anything else. And then we took another snapshot after 3 months, and we had a 17% rise in overall dysbiosis index over the placebo. So that showed, again, that something biologically remarkable happens within the microbiome just by drinking the water.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, very cool. You know, one of the things that I think about is that it's very difficult to get high quality food. It's very difficult to get nutrient dense food. And so I'm just curious, if people were watering their plants with this water, would you, well, I guess the question is, do you know? Suppose we could hypothesize. I would hypothesize that the nutrient density of the plant would increase, but do you have any studies to show that?
We're actually in the middle of the large agriculture study doing exactly that. Nutrient density, shelf life, all of it. What we proved already, we actually, already, I believe 6 months ago now, it's actually, the study is going to be published. We did a kind of extensive test on using the latest fluorescence-based technology. So what we did, we took basil plants, we watered some with regular water, some with Aǹalemma water, then we created a short-term drought, and we let them recover. Because we wanted to see how plants react to stress when watered with Aǹalemma water. And this latest fluorescence-based technology is actually amazing. You have this high-tech scanner, and you put every single plant in it. And it takes high-resolution images, and you can actually get a mountain of data, what's happening inside the plant on a molecular level. And on like multiple parameters, we saw that plants, when you water them with Aǹalemma water, they create this extraordinary resilience. Even when you stress them out, they actually perform much, much better. And actually not one parameter, there are 20 different parameters. So this is also something which is huge, which we're not only staying within human health, we want to change the whole agriculture industry, because we're having now this crazy weather all over the planet. And we know that plants are very, very resilient to any stressors, just watering them with Aǹalemma water.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. There's no doubt that water is foundational. And I guess when you're watering these plants, let's say you're outside and you're putting the water on these crops, but then it rains. It doesn't matter if it rains. It doesn't tend to wash this away or diminish the effect.
Again, this is so amazing that you're asking. Again, we're coming back that water is always going to pick up the most, and remember, the most dominant frequency of its environment. Once you introduce this water, if any other water comes into the system that is of lesser frequency, quote unquote, it can never overpower the most dominant one. That's why when we realized this whole thing and when we created what we call the mother water, we knew that if we expose any other water to it, all the water will become it. And I just have to say, we mentioned this first application that we came out with, which is the wand. This is not actually glass wand. It's actually made of crystal glass. Why is this important?
Okay.
Because it creates, of course, the barrier between, as Steve is showing it, it creates the barrier between the mother water, which is inside, and water outside. But more importantly, crystal serves as a superconductor. So it actually transmits or allows the frequency of mother water to be transmitted anywhere else around it without any loss. So when you swirl the Aǹalemma through your glass, any H2O molecule that comes into close proximity to it starts to mimic its exact state and structure. That's why it's so simple.
Okay.
And that's why it works. And I have to emphasize one other thing. We actually are going to launch in a couple of months Garden Aǹalemma, because we want to offer people opportunity to grow their food with this water. But we created the other thing, which is already on the market, which is a whole house Aǹalemma. So people can actually...
A whole what?
A whole house Aǹalemma, whole house Aǹalemma.
So you really? You basically, your whole water system is being structured this way.
And this is very interesting. So you can install it in the piping system of your house, and anywhere you open your faucet, you get a coherent water. But why we actually did this is really important. Of course, you don't have to swirl anymore. So it's simple from that perspective. But more than that, we actually hypothesized what would happen if people would lay and bathe in Aǹalemma water for half an hour. Mm-hmm. Because 99% of our molecules are water. So we're kind of thinking, okay, something biologically remarkable could happen again. And then we actually connected to Hydrate Spa and Dr. Greg Lane in San Diego, since they already had this system where they had these baths and they had diagnostic equipment. They can measure vitals before and after. And we are now actually doing 100 people study there. They were actually measuring cardiac output, stroke volume, blood viscosity, and more importantly, heart rate variability. And I can tell you, every single person in the study up until now experienced increase in cardiac output, stroke volume, blood viscosity, and heart rate variability.
So a decrease in blood viscosity is what you're saying?
Yeah, of course. I apologize. Yeah, so these are, but more importantly, I'm going to now really go deep and expand the study on heart rate variability, because this is really a powerful indicator of overall health and wellness. And in every single person, and it's very easy, it's very simple tech to measure heart rate variability. And in every single person, we saw very actually positive result. So we're very much encouraged in exploring that. You know, we can do only so much studies in a year, and we're really kind of going all out in various directions. But this is something really exciting.
This episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast is brought to you by Mimeo, a supplement designed to give people the benefits of fasting without having to fast.
Yeah, Mimeo's research found that the human body produces a unique set of molecules during a 36-hour fast. And those molecules were responsible for activating many of the cellular health and longevity benefits of fasting.
With Mimeo, you can get the cellular health and metabolic benefits of a 36-hour fast even during a meal, or you can use it to maximize the benefits of your shorter fasts with powerful boosts in mood, focus, energy, performance, recovery, and appetite control. Dr. Gladden, in the 2 years I've been working with you and the 5+ years I've been listening to the show, I've never heard you talk about something outside the Gladden Longevity line of products like I've heard you talk about Mimeo. Why do you like it so much? Use it and make it a part of some of your presentations.
Yeah, we love it, quite honestly. I mean, the idea of Mimeo being able to mimic fasting, we all know the benefits of fasting, is dramatic in and of itself. And even in the context of if you're eating, and if you're fasting, it even augments your fast that much more. But the interesting thing is that it also decreases things like neuroinflammation, it suppresses appetite, and it increases a very, very important biological process called reverse cholesterol transport. And that's critical for cardiovascular disease, for decreasing risk of dementia, cancer, et cetera. It's really, it's quite a fascinating product. I've really been kind of blown away by it.
As a way to help support this podcast and save money on your Mimeo order, you can use the discount code GLADDEN10 to get 10% off your order at mimeohealth.com. That's that code again, mimeohealth.com. That code again, GLADDEN10 at mimeohealth.com.
Think of it as a way to unlock the power of your biology. You know, it makes me wonder if you're improving really the nervous system function, right? You're kind of decreasing sympathetic nervous system tone, increasing parasympathetic nervous system tone, vagal nerve tone, calming the nervous system on some level, synchronizing the hemispheres. You know, it sort of sounds like the effects of meditation or something, you know, a more spiritual experience. And so I wonder if there's an augmentation of people's ability to meditate or their spiritual experience or their sense of connection drinking this water. Has anybody reported that? Or
I'm really grateful that you asked this question. Thank you so much, Dr. Gladden, because we saw a mountain of emails of people reporting the change. That's why we even call this water conscious water. I'm going to tell you one story which really kind of blew our mind very early on in our research. So we actually took seeds, which are these tiny pieces of life, and we watered some with regular water and some with Aǹalemma water, and we measured biophoton emissions. So with seeds watered with regular water, we basically saw nothing interesting. But it was very different with the seeds that were watered with Aǹalemma water. We started seeing this sinusoidal shape of peaks and valleys of biophoton emission. Like this tiny particle of life started to breathe in some way or form. And it really puzzled us. So we kind of connected to more than several scientists to discover what was this phenomenon. And after a while, we realized that it followed the tides. So this water
followed the tides. Interesting.
So this water connected this tiny piece of life to the circadian rhythm of nature. It opened it electromagnetically to its larger electromagnetic environment, which was really, really, really profound. And then again, we saw with people who are drinking this water, without changing anything else in the world, somehow their whole outlook on life starts to change. Their diets start to change. Their overall interest in health and wellness change. Their desire to exercise change. I mean, it was really profound to get all of these thousands of letters of people which report so many things.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? You know, when you think about the toxic environment that we live in, and it's a very toxic environment, it sounds like that this water structuring, this energetic, is actually in some ways counteracting some of that, you know, allowing people not to be stressed by the environment or whatever, coming into a greater sense of equilibrium, both biologically and physically, so physically and metaphysically almost, right? So that's a really fascinating concept. It'd be interesting to try this. I'm really anxious to try it, drinking 1.5 liters a day for the next year and see what happens.
Please do. So, and I'm really looking forward to your results, because I can tell you one thing. We're getting so much results from people which we wouldn't even anticipate. That's why I love that we kind of remain in touch with people drinking the water. They're constantly actually inspiring us to even take a route in some terms of studying or exploring, because it didn't even cross our minds. That's why I'm saying in all of our research, we realized when you change this most fundamental level of existence, which is water, entire biology follows. So you can actually go in many directions. It's very holistic.
One of the things we do with water is we use molecular hydrogen. So we drop molecular hydrogen tablets with magnesium into water. And of course, it permeates the gas through the water. And the hydrogen itself has many health benefits, many health benefits. Decreasing oxidative stress, decreasing pain, improving mental clarity and energy and things like that. And then we've started to imprint information into those tablets for energy and for relaxing people. And there are other things that we can do as well. But I'm just wondering, if you were to put hydrogen into this water and you were drinking this water regularly, you may get an even bigger impact from the hydrogen. I'm hypothesizing. Have you tried combining things with the water to see if a vitamin works better or a supplement works better?
We're working on several things. I cannot kind of stay because we still have to do kind of 100% kind of hardcore science on it. But early results are phenomenal. So this water is like it enhances whatever you put on it. It actually, since it's a optimum or a dominant frequency carrier, whatever you put inside, it will get in some way or form enhanced. So there is really interesting things happen when you combine this water with basically anything. But I have to, again, come back to one really interesting thing. People usually, when they talk about water, they usually kind of go, okay, you filter the water, you filter it from the chemical point of view. But I have to tell you one thing. Even if you filter out toxins and chemicals out of the water, the frequency of those chemicals still exists in the water. And this is where Aǹalemma Water actually not only cleans the state, but puts the water in its optimum state of receiving the optimum information from its larger environment.
We're going to do a podcast soon looking at a company out of Israel that's using bioreactors to grow food. And from the food, they're harvesting very high concentrations of a very special resveratrol. They're growing grapes, but it's a Praseid resveratrol. It's not like cis or trans resveratrol. It has very, very high bioactivity. Mm-hmm. And they're showing phenomenal results with the molecule in a variety of conditions like congestive heart failure and high blood pressure and some things like this. Yeah, it's really quite interesting. But I'm thinking if they were to use this water in their bioreactor, it might be very interesting because they might even get an increase in the potency of the molecules or maybe a bigger yield from them. They're also doing something with olives to extract some of the key essential molecules out of olives that, of course, have good longevity benefits, right? So sirtuin activation, things like this. So
brilliant.
Anyway, it's quite interesting to think about combining this with other technologies to enhance the whole area of health and wellness and longevity, if you will. So
definitely, we're so much open to any and all collaborations because I'm telling you, we barely scratched the surface of the beauty of this. So we definitely want to collaborate with other scientists and actually see where we can take this. I'm telling you, all of us in the Aǹalemma, we feel that we're serving this water, not the other way around, because it has such profound effects that we kind of just want to do it justice. We actually, our whole mission statement is to make all bodies of water coherent. We actually developed this eco-friendly technology that we can install in the wells of the biggest rivers. Excuse me. So then we know that the microbiome of water and soil is going to change. And all life would thrive.
Interesting. I wonder what happens if you put it in the radiator of your car, if it runs better.
Well, this was an interesting idea, Jeffrey, and we really had to kind of try it out.
It stays cooler in the heat. I don't know. Just teasing, of course.
Of course. But there are many. I have to tell you one interesting thing. There is one company in the Netherlands. They have created a way to extract water when wherever there is a fresh water and seawater coming together. There is this chemical.
Brackish water.
They actually manage a way to extract high levels of electricity from that. And now we're doing
electricity.
Yes, electricity, and it's really like a power plant, very powerful. And if they only increase the capacity for 100%, that would actually be equivalent to a nuclear power plant. It's an emerging technology, amazing. Wow. And now we're actually doing a test with them in the Netherlands because we already saw that the electric potential of the water, usually it's anywhere between 150 and 300 millivolts. But if you just swirl the Aǹalemma through, that same potential skyrockets by 300%. So we actually connected with them to see whether the electric potential of water would increase through their extraction process. So that's what I'm saying. We're actually going in various directions. Not all of them are actually health and wellness connected, but the potential of it is really
some of them are industrial.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's fascinating. Okay, cool. Steve, do you have any thoughts or questions? Oh, I have a question, but the question I was going to ask is, how long do you have to swirl it in what volume of water to make sure that you basically structured it?
Yeah, so for, let's say, 1 cup of water, you have to swirl for 30 seconds. For all bigger, if you go for a liter or 2 liters, yes, you have to swirl for longer. Let's say a minute and a half. And I always say to people, also, if you want to take a bath and you don't want to buy whole house Aǹalemma, what you can do, I told this to many people, you just put your wand underneath the flowing water underneath your faucet. And you have to wait until the bathtub is filled. But then you can actually do it yourself and have a bath in Aǹalemma water.
Interesting. Okay.
So Mario, what is in this?
This is what
wand
we call,
here that I'm showing on the video.
Yeah. This is what we call the mother water. It takes us 1 full year to create this water, which is inside. It takes, there are 5 stages that water has to pass through. And when it passes the 5th stage, as I mentioned, it never goes back to the state of chaos. And we actually did many things to it. We radiated it. We did all kinds of things to it to see whether it will fall out. And it actually never did. That's why it's so special. That's why we really have extraordinary effects with it.
What are those 5 stages that you put the water through, that the water goes through?
Actually, this is we are protecting this knowledge because we didn't even want to patent it. Because, usually when you patent something, you have to reveal the whole system. And, in the last decade, there were a lot of patent infringement from the large companies. So we're really kind of protective of the technology because we want to offer it to the world in the purest kind of way. But I can tell you that we are mimicking the natural processes in nature. So we're using precious metals. We're using actually lightning as well in the whole process. Just to give you kind of a hint what we are doing. But when it passes, we're not actually using, some people are using vortexes and using magnets. We're not actually going at all in that direction. And because we're doing it this way, it never goes back to chaos.
Does this water ever occur naturally?
We actually found, Dr. Larker went all over the world, and we only found this kind of water in very, very remote places. If you go really, really deep out of the civilization and you find a well. But even there, we realized when you take the water out and bring it somewhere, then again, it goes back to chaos. So you can find it in nature. Mm-hmm. And that's why we really know that this is how water should be on the planet. But for some reason, due to, EMFs or toxic elements flowing everywhere, that natural, how water's supposed to be actually got changed or ruined or whatever.
Are there any ions in the water in the wand, or is it just pure H2O, or does it have sodium?
No. It's pure. It's pure filtered H2O. But we the number one thing is that we change its state. That's it. So it doesn't have anything to do with any chemical in it. It's the state of the water which is inside.
Yeah, because it looks, as I rotate the wand back and forth, it almost looks like a gel.
Yeah, it changes the viscosity, and when you swirl it, you might actually experience this. But most people, and I'm really talking large percentage of people, you cannot miss the taste, which is really kind of funny when you look at it. It's the same water, and you just swirl through it, and the taste changes. I sometimes tell this story. Dr. Mindy Pelt, which I really love, she's an amazing woman, an amazing expert. Her sister is also an accomplished doctor. And she saw Mindy swirling her wand and drinking the water. And she was like, what are you doing? What is this? And then they actually did a 5 blind tests consecutive. And every single time her sister showed the ones who was done with an Aǹalemma wand. So it's the same water. So you just swirl it and something very palpable and taste. You can change the taste. You can experience the change in taste.
Now, Mario, for those of us that don't want to sit and swirl a 1 liter Nalgene bottle like I'm doing right now for a minute and a half, could we, much like the bath example that you gave earlier, hold the wand like this and run the water into here over the wand to help decrease that time of swirling?
Definitely. But I would just say, don't run the water too high, and just be sure that the water passes entirely over the wand. Then you're 100% sure that you got it right.
I've just been playing around with this a little bit, and now like Dr. Gladden, I'm going to be doing this with my water regularly, especially before as I'm hydrating to get ready to hop in my sauna, and while I'm hydrating in my sauna.
And I can tell you one thing.
With the bad and with the good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I always invite people to do this simple test. If you own an Aǹalemma, you take 2 basil plants and you water one with regular water and one with Aǹalemma water for 3 weeks. And then...
Yeah. I've got some plants. We can test that.
Because these plants grow like crazy. You can have a jungle in your home, which is very, very visible. This is actually, I had a personal experience with it, which kind of... inspired many of the tests that we did. Actually, in my summer house, I had this beautiful large basil plant, and I had to leave for a couple of days, and it was very, very hot. And after 4 days, usually you would see that the plant is completely shriveled. It was almost like nothing touched it. There was no...
more resilience.
It's extraordinary resilience, and it's very visual. You cannot miss it, especially when you compare it with the plant that you just use regular water with. So you cannot miss it.
What's interesting, as we age, we lose resilience, right? It's one of the key things. It's a global metric of aging, is decreased resilience rather. And so it'd be interesting to see the impact of this on the aging process and people's resilience. Have you done anything like that to show improved immunity or decreased inflammation or any of these kinds of things?
We actually connected to glycan age. I love them because they're not just like, it's they measure biological age in contrast to chronological age. But what I love about glycan age is because their test is very powerful indicator of your overall health and wellness. So they're actually the leaders in glycoscience. They have over 120 published works in glycoscience. So they really
use it. We test everybody with glycan age in our practice. Yeah, my last age came in at 26.
Oh, brilliant. Well, you can see that on you. Yeah. Again, we did the study where people drank a liter and a half of Aǹalemma water per day for 3 months, because people in glycan age told us that to see a profound change, you need at least 3 months. So what we did is we again instructed people, nobody's supposed to change their diets, exercise regime. We follow everything to the letter. And at the end, almost every single person in the study experienced between 1 and 12 years of biological age regeneration. I don't know
Very
if you're aware, but the CEO of the company is actually Croatian.
Just got the thought of, similar to the bath idea, just dropping this in my cold plunge because it's filtering the water through, leaving it for a day or two, and then...
We are actually developing with one American company for cold plunges, a special technology. And also we're doing the same thing for pools because people are really having extraordinary results. So we are creating something that people can use in their cold plunges and also their pools.
How do people get a hold of this? How do people find you or find the product? How do they get it? Is it available in the U.S.?
Of course. Yeah, of course. We have a warehouse in America, warehouse in Europe, from where we are actually covering the entire planet. People can go to coherent-water.com.
Coherent-water.com.
Yeah, and they can purchase the one. I also encourage people to jump on our newsletter because we're constantly doing new science. So if you want to follow our work, just jump on there. We're going to share all the information, everything that is evolving around it. We're constantly sharing on the newsletters.
And if people in their checkout use the code AgeHackers, they'll get 10% off of their order, which for a whole house unit is some pretty good savings.
It's a pretty good savings. Yeah.
Well, it's been great chatting with you, Mario. Appreciate you taking the time.
Definitely.
And zooming in from
Croatia.
Yeah, it's cool.
I love doing this. I'm telling you, the only thing that I want to do is just do the whole project justice because this thing really is phenomenal. And I'm really kind of super grateful to be part of the project. And I'm super excited about everything that is on our plate at the moment because there are so many kind of incredible, actually, things happening. So I'm guessing that next year, we're going to have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast. If you would like more information on what we've discussed or other topics, please reference the show notes or go to gladdenlongevitypodcast.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter by searching Gladden Longevity. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to get future episodes delivered to you and share our podcast or this episode with someone in your life that you may find benefit. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode. The Gladden Longevity Podcast is provided for informational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The use of any information and materials linked to this podcast is at the listener's own risk.